All right. Bismillah. Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Let me get this sun out of the angle here. Let me get a better angle on this. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. I'm doing pretty good.
That's good to know. Let's talk a little bit about some of this melodrama of these Baha'i cultists, and particularly the hissy fit of Mr. Matthew Haas on that, pseudo-academic Sheikh Babi and Baha'ism, which is just, it's just a toilet can of a list. I mean, I said this to Tobias Vetter the other night on Nate Abu Kiri's wall. This guy's apparently on his page.
Okay.
That, the standard of that list is so substandard, right? That, they have a long way to go before they reach the levels that Juan Cole and John Walbridge attained in quality back in the 90s with and the zeros with Talisman at Indiana EDU and then later H. Baha'i. Those people that run these three Germans that run that list, that Tobias Vetter, and then there's this guy Rosenbaum, etc. I mean, I really question their credentials. I mean, you look at Tobias Vetter's Facebook page; he's got like a whole list of what he claims are his qualifications. He's apparently in the IT tech business and what have you. But, someone who on Facebook of all places puts a massive resume of themselves really has a self-confidence problem in terms of their profession. Anyway, the thing is that Matthew Haas, who we did a couple of podcasts about already, has had a hissy fit claiming that he has been stalked.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, sure, read it. Go ahead.
You want me to just read this? Okay. Yeah. This is his post. It said it was put up 13 hours ago from the time we're recording this. Yeah. I really like participating in this group, but I will have to stop doing so for the unforeseeable future. This has nothing to do with the admins or the content posted in this group. Unfortunately, there is a member of this group, parentheses, using multiple burner accounts, end parentheses, who has been monitoring, stalking, and harassing me for reasons that do not make sense to me. I blocked this individual in August 2018 after he accused me of spying on him in service to the Baha'i administration.
Which he
went, quote unquote, no contact with him for 2 years and 2 months. In October 2020, he took a screenshot of a comment I had made on a post in this group. Then he found my music page where I don't talk about religion and wrote an insulting and harassing comment on one of my posts, accompanied with the screenshot of my comment, in order to let me know that he is, quote unquote, watching me.
Mm-hmm, I am.
I did not respond to the comment and blocked him from that page. Then in December 2020, he made a 16-minute long video about me on YouTube and called me a piece of shit, a person lacking a, quote, moral compass, having ethno-national self-hatred as my prime motivation for embracing Islam as a teenager, among other things.
That I have not said. That he's making up.
Okay.
The podcast is there. The fact of the matter, here's the fact of the matter. In 2009, and I have the series of emails that I put on publicly on TRB, and I will put a link to that composite of emails, his words, again. If anybody wants the original, I'm happy to give the original as well. Those are Matthew Haas's emails, where he came to me out of the blue to my email unbidden, claiming to be a Muslim, and that he was, disenchanted with whatever Baha'i pedigree that he had. It appears that his family are Baha'is. And then subsequent to that, for the next, I would say, 7 to 8 years, this guy followed me around on every conceivable list. Online, not just on Facebook or on Usenet, but on, he was on the ayahuasca forums. He was on various lists that I set up on Facebook. All the while, and it's very obvious to me now that all the while this guy was surveillancing me. And all that time he was a Baha'i. Now, during that entire period, I have multiple screenshots from multiple posts from this guy very explicitly claiming to be a Muslim. I have no problem with white reverts, converts to Islam whatsoever. In fact,
we know a few. They're our friends.
as you have seen yourself on my various friends lists and groups that I go to, I interact with these people all the time. One of my best friends here in Australia is one, Muhammad Ali Khalil. So that's what he's saying there. That's horseshit, and I haven't made that accusation about him. What I have made an accusation against Matthew Haas is very explicit, that he is a charlatan, and he's basically, whether he does it knowingly or unknowingly, I don't know. But based on the fact that he initially reached out to me at a time in late 2009 when I had basically pulled somewhat away from public postings about the Baha'is on Usenet, claiming that, that he was, everything I was saying was true. And then subsequently, he came on the ayahuasca forums to that Fatimiyya subgroup that we used to have, and was constantly, basically doing a yes man kind of thing. Now, in all of these years, I have, because of things that have happened to me online and because of the surveillancing that the Baha'is have undertaken on me and the trolling, etc., I have become quite adept at understanding how these sorts of textbook strategies work. You need to experience these things in order to understand and to get into the head of it and to understand how this works. And we've also found that within the United States, North America in general, even beyond, troll farming is quite a lucrative corporate profession. And it's not just the Baha'is doing it. There's multiple actors out there doing it all the time. And, this is part of their opposition research. This is also part of, basically getting into the head of their opposition, undermining their opposition, except this stuff happens on the internet all the time, everywhere, with all kinds of groups, people, and what have you. But this guy was a dishonest actor, and I caught him red-handed. So if he wants to claim that I have been stalking him, actually, no, I have not been stalking him. However, after I caught him red-handed, basically with his tongue attached to the backside of the Baha'i community of the United States, and pushing overtly mainstream fundamentalist Baha'i talking points in contraopposition to everything that he had been saying to me, whether privately or on these various lists, about what his true beliefs are, and in contradistinction to the fact that he was identifying himself as an ally of Michael Muhammad Knight, who I happen to not like very much, as a Muslim, goes to the fact that this guy was shilling, right? And it's as simple as that. Someone who is disenchanted with the Baha'i faith, right, and who knows the score, knows the history, and I gave a lot of links, a lot of PDFs, a lot of stuff to this guy to look into. If he had even looked at a fraction of any of this stuff, unless the guy is either mentally ill or has been a Baha'i the whole time, no one reverts back to Baha'ism and then becomes a completely seasoned Baha'i fundamentalist. Now, throughout this time, this guy on Facebook would post on my wall. He was there through the whole period while I was in Germany, married to Roya. In early 2017, following the inauguration of Donald Trump, I never forget this. He came on one of my posts on Facebook and thanked me publicly for saving him from falling into the clutches of the alt-right. Right? I also have that post where he says that he felt that he was being manipulated to hate people of color, and et cetera, et cetera. I have all of this posts. I screenshot everything, and with all interactions with people online, because I have learned the hard way that cyberspace is a war zone, but a war zone that it is also a legal domain. That means that because it is there are legal ramifications to everything that happens. And one is, to protect oneself, one should always record conversations, especially with people who refuse, as Matthew Haas always did, to have either a phone conversation with me, a Skype conversation with me, or otherwise. Throughout all this time, for almost 10 years, where this guy was following me around the internet, not once did he accept a face-to-face conversation or even a telephone conversation. But he was professing to be my friend and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I find this guy, suddenly, have a sort of a, inverse road to Damascus experience, and now pushing the hardline Baha'i talking point. What does that say to any person, other than the fact that this guy has been a Baha'i the whole time, and that this whole strategy of his in 2009 until 2018 was complete bollocks, that he was a shill for the Baha'i Internet Agency the whole time. And since we have their white papers, And since we have the directives of the UHJ itself and the manners in which they surveillance their opposition, how they claim, for example, in this 2001 directive to the counselors, that the institution of the auxiliary boards for protections are to discreetly investigate the activities of the enemies of the faith and those who have been put out. Any court, any reasonable man, in the face of both the written evidence and the compiled evidence of the behavior of these people, will come to no other conclusion but that this guy was an active member of the Baha'i Internet Agency the entire time that he claimed to be my friend, and that this is a very common strategy where you keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This guy was pushed into my orbit as a friend, claiming to be an ex-Baha'i, claiming to be a Muslim, revert, convert, whatever, in order to keep his eye on me. These are classic tactics of the Baha'is. Other people have been subjected to almost very similar things. I am seasoned enough, and I know exactly what to do with this kind of situation when it appears. There are lawyers on that site, on that academic. One of them, Mr. Christopher Buck. The other one, Tobias Vetter. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other ones of these Baha'i lawyers there. I defy these people. If there is a matter, bring it to court. Let us take all the evidence to a courtroom, put it in front of a judge or a jury or both, and let them decide who he is acting in good faith and not. Let them decide who is stalking who. Because once this evidence is compiled, once it is put in front of a judge, no jury of sound mind, no judge of sound mind would ever conclude anything other than the fact that this was the behavior of Matthew Haas, the behavior of the Baha'i Internet Agency and the Baha'is online is in bad faith, and that what happened with what they claim, was going on with Matthew Haas is nothing short of nothing less than surveillance. It's as simple as that. And because I caught this guy red-handed, and when I caught someone like that red-handed and lying in the brazen way that this guy has been doing, I'm going to publicize it, and I'm going to kick them in the ass so hard that they squeal. And this Matthew Haas has been kicked in the ass, and he's squealing like a pig, as he should. It really is that straightforward. These people are on notice that you got to stop this kind of behavior. You either come on level, you play on the level field with people, even with your opposition and ex-Baha'is, or prepare to have your ass kicked, right? I am not going to tar off with this Baha'i organization and its membership there, right? You people have fucked with me for over 20-something years, right? And I'm determined to fuck with you back. And it's as simple as that. Over to you.
Okay, yeah. Well, at the same time, it's kind of silly to me almost that, as you said, if this goes to a court, the thing is you haven't brought any suit against him. You're just trying to expose him. And, so is he in any legal trouble? No.
Well, actually, he might be in legal trouble in a courtroom situation because of his claim of being a Muslim. See, if that ever comes to court, the court will want to know the trajectory of affiliation during all of that period of the claims that he's making. Whether he was a card-carrying Baha'i during that period, at the beginning of the period that he came to me claiming to be a Muslim, and if not, why not? I don't think that Matthew Haas ever withdrew from the Baha'i faith. See, and if that is the case, and if this is established in court that he has been a card-carrying Baha'i the whole time, right, this basically proves that the guy had bad faith the entire time that he was interacting with me, and that basically proves my case that he was following me around on behalf of the Baha'is.
Yeah. Well, I'm just talking about in terms of the legality, like what could actually happen if that came out, other than just get discredited, look bad, that sort of crap. And to me, if he's basically withdrawing from something where right now it's a matter of words, it's like, it's awful privileged to me, if that's the case.
Look, man, those people on that list, that is honky town on steroids. Okay? Yeah. And the way and the manner in which Aziz Maboya was browbeaten with utter racist diarrhea by these white Anglo-Baha'is, like that idiot Derek Cockshut. What a name. Derek Cockshut. And some of these other people, that Matthew Haas is then seeing and appealing to these jerks who run that place basically tells you all you need to know about the mentality of Matthew Haas himself.
Yeah. Well, it's a public group, and, other people will straggle in there occasionally, even if it is, as you say, honky town. I'll go on and just read the rest of it if you want to give any more responses.
Sure.
Then in January or early February 2021, he accused one of my Facebook quote-unquote friends of secretly being me in disguise for the purpose of spying on him for the BIA.
Yep.
Because of all this, I do not feel safe participating in this group, and unless and parentheses potentially and parentheses until he gets bored with me and moves on to another alleged spy tasked with thwarting his great purpose in life.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I'm not only focused on him, I'm focused on the entire Baha'i organization. He is just one node of it. He's just one thread of a string that I'm looking at. I'm also very intensely looking at someone like Tobias Vetter in Germany and some of his so-called Baha'i German colleagues there, particularly given the fact that my wife, right, mysteriously died at a time that I started putting up very serious podcasts with Kevon Yahya on YouTube. Right?
And me. I was on a few of those too.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking at all of these angles. He's not my main focus. I am looking at the chivalry of the Baha'i organization. I'm also constantly surveillancing people like Arthur Logan Decker III. He's another one of these assholes on Facebook. And so on and so forth. I keep tabs on this organization. They do it themselves. And there's even a directive from the Universal House of Justice saying that they do that. I do it. But I'm a one-man show according to them. Although, there's a lot of people here helping me in this process to keep tabs on this Baha'i organization. But see, when when you do it to them, they don't like it. So then they turn around and play victim. Yeah. You understand? And, woe is me is their common tactic because they've been caught with their proverbial dick in their hands, with their pants down and their dick in their hands, and they don't like it. Now, this should tell you what a lot of this narratology around persecution in Iran is all about as well. Because this is a common tactic that these Baha'is are almost brainwashed to implement in every conceivable setting. They perpetrate something, right? When someone, calls it out and identifies what is going on, they have a hissy fit and, start the woe is me line and the feigning victimhood. Exactly.
Well, that's what's going on here. Honky Town has been doing for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
They come in, they go colonizing the whole damn world at gunpoint, killing, raping, stealing. Now, granted, I know this is not on that level, but I'm just kind of drawing a little parallel here. And so then when the oppressed fight back, then all of a sudden they're the victims, and these black people or these brown people are just so violent, yada, yada, yada. Whereas, it wasn't the black and brown folks who initiated the violence in the first place.
That's right.
So it's that same kind of, just the way the abuser whines when someone fights back.
Now, one thing this guy has just let out of the bag, the cat he's let out of the bag, which is just quite interesting here, is that this troll, Abdul Halim Vaz, came to one of the lists I'm subscribed to, and all of a sudden started trolling me and my friend Mohammed Ali Khalil. This is last week. And I did accuse him. I said that you are a sock puppet of Matthew Haas. Now, all of a sudden, Matthew Haas is expressing this very fact of what I told this guy in his little, woe is me letter on that academic Sheikh Babi Baha'i list.
Well, and technically, somebody being a sock puppet is not the same thing as dual identity.
Yeah, so right there, Matthew Haas has just proven my assertion to this guy and to the moderators of that other list that this Vaz guy was a sock puppet of Matthew Haas. Correct.
Yeah. And I'll go on just so they don't accuse us of leaving anything off. Where was I? Okay, I know that the admins can do nothing about this, and he has several burner profiles with different names.
Yeah, I do. Just so you pause. Tobias, Tobias, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are, I have over 30 accounts. Actually, no, probably closer to about 50 accounts subscribed to that list, lurking there. Go for your life trying to find them.
It would be impossible to scour all the profiles that are members of this group and discover all his profiles, nor would I want them to take on such a time-consuming and laborious task. Oh, the poor things.
Oh, poor things.
Yeah. The lesson I have learned from all this is be careful who you talk to on the internet and remember that everything you write on social media lasts forever.
Right on.
Oh, yeah. How did Will Rogers, I mean, why is that a bad thing? How did Will Rogers put it? Live as if you would sell your parrot to the town gossip. Back to what you're saying, though. Even if it's not bad, there are evil people out there who may target you for reasons that only make sense to themselves and the unfortunate souls who are under their spell.
Right. Considering that this is the guy that reached out to me claiming to be a Muslim, right, in 2009, and then subsequently followed me around all over the internet. I am the evil guy. And who, by the way, refused, after professing the undying friendship, refused to even have a phone conversation with me, even one time.
Yeah. Okay. The unfortunate souls who are under their spell, souls who will most certainly find themselves in the same position sooner or later. Thank you for the fruitful conversations.
Yada, yada, yada. Yada, yada, yada. This guy is either a shill or mentally ill. There's no middle ground here. You want to cut people slack. Life is complex. People's mentalities are complex. But this guy is either crazy or a shill. There is no middle ground. Right?
Yeah, well, I noticed, because what's been very odd to me, and we're not just talking about this dude, but I'll use him as an example. If I click on his profile, it says we have only one mutual friend. Mm-hmm. Now, that one mutual friend happens to have passed on a few years ago. Mm. For the record, I never actually met this mutual friend in person. We did have a phone conversation, though, briefly. I was actually it's from the same town, one of the towns I used to live in. Mm. And I was visiting some friends there. This was at least 3 or 4 years back. Because I know he's not that long passed on, although it's been at least a couple of years. And I remember there were originally some friends who were thinking we'd get along pretty well. And like I said, we were social media friends. And we're thinking of having him, put me up for the night. And he, for whatever reason, turned that down, never got to meet him. Because I do still try to be, I do still have friends who are Baha'is, and, I'm humane with them. It's very sad how many of them don't know how much of this goes on. But that's kind of my point, in the sense that, when I click on a lot of Baha'is, or whether they're just pretending to be and shilling, I don't know. But the point is, if I click on one of these profiles, I might have a mutual friend or two, and sometimes none. Whereas if other people, and I'm not talking about anybody in the academic shaky Bobby and Baha'i group. Obviously, there's some with many more, because they're people who are within a community, who make friends, who don't just spend all their time on the internet, the whole bit. And I'll easily get people with 5, 10, 20 or more. Yeah. Okay, but a lot of these folks who are posting a lot, or who are, among other things, doing what apparently looks like surveillance, who appear to be the shill or the troll types, usually don't have many mutual friends with me, if any at all. And for such a tight-knit community, that shows some, so that's a red flag there to me.
One thing that is a red flag for me is that no one has seen a picture of Matthew Haas that has changed in the last 13 years. He has been posting the same picture of himself or a series of pictures of himself for the last 13 years that I've known him. And that's very suspicious. The pic that he has darkened his profile pic on his Facebook since, I would say, probably around 2013, right? And this has never changed. And the picture, for example, that he posts of himself in that, page that he made for himself, that was complaining about, that I posted that screenshot from Michael Muhammad Knight's page. That same picture that he's using there is the same picture that he was using on a Facebook profile in 2010. So this guy obviously doesn't want to be identified. And I'm even beginning to question whether that's even his real name, Matthew Haas. Okay. Look, let me reemphasize this. There is a UHJ directive that was publicized in 2001 that is basically giving a carte blanche to the auxiliary board members for surveillance of dissidents and people who have been put out of this cult, right? So, and this is how the Baha'is cannot dig themselves out of any kind of a legal hole if the matter ever comes to a court's attention, is because this directive is explicitly spelled out by the UHJ. So this is not an allegation that the Baha'is do this. This is a directive that the UHJ itself issued in 2001.
I know. I've seen the quotes, I've seen the letters. Now, the odd thing is, though, a lot of rank and file Baha'is don't know this.
Because a lot of rank and file Baha'is, especially a lot of rank and file North American or white Australian Baha'is, people who are kind of regarded as being kind of at the bottom of the conversion kind of hierarchy, are never in the know about these things. And the reason is simple, and anybody who has any knowledge of the Baha'i community from the inside knows that there are very elaborate systems of apartheid in place all over the Baha'i community. Ethnic, class, but also conversion. These are the three categories of apartheid that are practiced. And this is also the way a mafia operates, or an intelligence organization, where things are made known on a need-to-know basis, right? Yeah. So, those at the very top of the chain who associate with those at the top of the hierarchy of management know more about what is actually going on and what the actual organization does than those at the very below middle management of the whole thing, or just your lay believers, And if you even told them, they wouldn't believe you, because they never experienced.
And that's the thing, because if they really did see that sort of directive. I mean, it was probably my best bud among it, did not know about the existence of the Baha'i Internet Agency. He's like, I don't think there is one. I'm like, well, yeah, there is.
They've got white papers.
Casual conversation. I didn't go onto my phone and start pulling stuff out. But the fact is, there's a lot of things that your average rank and file person who's a decent person would be quite miffed if they could get over the cognitive dissonance, goes on. So that they don't know does seem to be, at least to a large extent, by design.
Of course.
Because I think that if that reality sunk in, they'd be resigning.
But the thing is that the reality is not an allegation, that the organization itself has put all of these things out into the open. It's not, they're not hiding any of it.
Right, yeah. Well, it's not hidden, but they're not reporting it either. I mean, just because, we're in a culture where a lot of people don't read.
Well, we're not only in a culture where a lot of people don't read, we're also in a culture where people don't really pay attention to things and don't have any control over their own heads. And this is one of these instances. But the thing is that this is also an example of the kind of cognitive dissonance that is actively cultivated within the Baha'i organization from the Baha'i administration.
Yeah.
Right? Where they put these things out in the open, but then they preach all kinds of lovey-dovey, fluff and puff crap to these people from Baha'i writings.
Yeah.
While, all of this stuff is going on, while they're surveillancing, ex-Baha'is and dissidents. Look, the fact of the matter, one of the reasons why I'm angry at this little motherfucker is the following. I have a responsibility to the Baha'i community, and especially the Baha'is in Iran, to protect these people. Why? Because we all know that the Baha'is are out to wipe us out.
Yeah.
And in fact, they are on.
Well, you're not the only one who's protective there too. So am I.
Yeah. And they are, because Shoghi Effendi is on record, right? And this is what was one of the beliefs of these, at least the mainstream of these people, that the Baha'i community didn't exist. And the reason is that the existence of the Baha'i community to the Baha'i organization is a thorn in their ass, for the simple reason because, number one, it proves Shoghi Effendi to be a liar. And number two, it also proves that for all of his grandiosity, the so-called supreme manifestation of God for the next 500,000 years could not subdue the community of his rival and brother, right? And that must really sit in the craw of these people very seriously, and as it should. But the thing is, I have a protective responsibility towards these people, and especially those of them who are in Iran, especially in these times, given the fact that we have concrete evidence of the extent to which the Baha'is have managed to infiltrate the system in Iran and ally themselves with certain actors and elites within that system. Primarily, for one example that we all know about, is Faizeh Hashemi, the daughter of the late Ayatollah Rafsanjani, who was one of the most powerful men in that system. His daughter is buddy-buddy with these people. I even wrote an article about her in 2016 when she went to the home of Fariba Kamalawadi, etc. So the evidence of that is irrefutable. And then there was that incident in late 2018 when one of the Bayanis that was on Facebook and trying to debate these Baha'is on these points of theology and history, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, even though they had completely, hidden their real identity, but all of a sudden this person gets a summons from the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, Wazarat Etla'at, and is whisked away for over 73 hours without any word from his family as to where he had gone. They hold him in custody for that long, and then they let him go. Now, subsequently, I found out what had occurred, during those 73 hours. It gave me a whole lowdown. And basically, this person had been relentlessly interrogated until these people had realized that, that he's, the claims that were being made against him were false. But the only way in which this person would have been even be able to fall under the radar of the Iranian intelligence people is if he was ratted out to them. And who would rat someone like that, rat our friend out to the Iranian intelligence? None other than assholes like that Hajir Baha'i, this Baha'i in Colorado, a MAGA guy who used to have a profile pic of himself with a red MAGA hat, and who incidentally was also seen at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, I might add.
Oh, really?
There's a picture of this guy. There's a picture of this guy outside of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, right? So, this is what
obey the government.
Well, somebody.
Not that I'm saying that's a moral imperative or anything, but I mean, it does kind of show a bit of contradiction.
I don't care what the Baha'is knows, but I have tipped the FBI off about this guy based on a picture, and I sent the picture over to them. So, this is a situation, we are having our own people who are vulnerable, especially now during this Corona thing in Iran, where Iran is under sanctions. There's no medicines going into that country, right? And an older generation of people are basically forced to imprison themselves in their own homes, lest they go out in the street and catch this thing. The government is trying to minimize all of this and is doing the whole denial spiel and denial game over the Corona. And the management of this in Iran with the authorities in the Islamic Republic has been just absolutely atrocious. If anybody had even a speck of doubt that this regime are a bunch of assholes themselves, this whole corona crisis should leave no room for doubt for anyone anymore, that you're dealing with completely callous and cynical kleptocrats of the worst kind in that regime, in the way that they have mismanaged, protecting their own population from this pandemic. So in a situation like this, when I am a head of a community, right, I have a responsibility and duty to protect these people, even if I am, vulnerable in some ways myself. But, I am not going to put these people in harm's way. And so on a long-term basis, when you have individuals like this Matthew Haas, who are playing this duplicitous game on behalf of the Baha'i authorities, when they get caught red-handed, I will chop their nuts off in public if I have to. So, if he knew anything about me in all this time that he was following me around the internet, he should have known that if I caught him red-handed, I would stop at nothing to put my boot in his ass. And it's as simple as this. You play, in this life, what counts is if you're going to play, you play on level with people. If you fuck with people, right? If you play these sorts of duplicitous games and they bite and they start bark and bite hard at you, you should know not to do this sort of thing again to anybody else. So let this be a lesson to Mr. Matthew Haas, that in the future, if his Baha'i peers tell him to do this sort of thing to somebody else, that the experience that he's had of me should put him on perpetual notice never to do that again to anybody. So let this be the lesson to him. You do this, you play duplicitously with other people, and certain people will put their boot in your ass. As simple as that. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Though you mentioned his peers, it wouldn't be his peers, it would be his higher ups.
His higher ups, yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, I'd bet any amount of money that, the Baha'is I still know, that I'm still friends with, I guarantee you that the administration has not told them to keep an eye on me or anything like that, because that would send up a red flag for them. I mean, maybe one or two people, but could not. I know enough people that within it that they could not all conceal a secret from me. I mean, like I said, maybe there's one or two who are, but for the most part, I mean, if I know easily 100 people, and I know more than that, I'll just take like social media and things where we might actually talk about, issues, like, racism, other political stuff. If the higher ups were to tell them, keep an eye on what Matt's saying, I guarantee you it would raise a red flag.
But you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if they had been approached by certain people from the Baha'i organization to kind of feel out where these people are at, to see if there's even a possibility of doing that. And if they learn quickly that no, these people wouldn't play, then they back off and they try to find other avenues of doing the same thing. Because certain one or two members, I mean, like I've said before, I've cut off most of my extended Baha'i family, and I don't talk to these people at all. But others of them who I do talk to have told me over the years that these sorts of things actually did happen, that they were approached by members of the Baha'i administration about me, and what have you. My late grandfather, I mean, my father told me this story years ago. This is going back about 15 years ago, that sometime around 2002 or 3, my late grandfather in the United States had been approached by this Mrs. Cavalin, the wife of the late Bora Cavalin, who basically went into my grandparents' living room and made an ultimatum to them that they either cut off all relations with me or they would be declared covenant breakers. At which point my late grandfather basically told this woman in no uncertain terms in Persian to fuck off and threw her out of his house, right? My late father told me this story. So, these sorts of things also happen. But, I think if the organization is becoming savvy in any way, they know that, with certain people, there is so far that they can be pushed before they bark at them.
Yeah.
And do what my grandfather did, throw them out of their house.
Yeah.
But with others, no. And I think they realized that, my family, at least my extended family, was probably not the best means for trying to gain and garner information about me. So they, these Matthew Haas's and et cetera, and there have been a few of these over the years, have kind of been wheeled in to do that very thing. So, there's nothing that Matthew Haas can say in his own defense. I have his emails, his initial emails and exchange of emails with me initially. And this guy is now a proven liar, and he can cry in a corner as long as he wants. I have caught him red-handed, right? I am not exclusively stalking him at all. In fact, I'm not stalking him. On Facebook, that's a public list, right?
Yeah.
And the Baha'is can claim it to be private or whatever. I've got close to 50 accounts dormant sitting there surveillancing the whole place. But the fact of the matter is that if the issue ever comes to the attention of judicial bodies, right, and given the kind of shit, the stunts that these Baha'is have been pulling on me for no reasons many times, there is no way that any courts, any credible court, right, would say anything different to what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. I definitely agree. I'll also, because you mentioned something a couple minutes back that I do want to comment on. Like I said, if they had gone to a whole bunch of my friends, if the administration gone to a whole bunch of my friends, one of them would have said, hey, Matt, by now. But that's not to say they didn't get to, I will say for the record, and I want this on camera for the record, I did have a very close friend of 20 years disown me just slightly over a year ago for being Baha'i. And I was about to just go to I'm getting there. I was about to head over to her house on a cross-country drive, and then she kind of intercepted that. Even tried to say, "Oh, I think," and her exact words were, "Oh, I think Baha'u'llah is the absolute truth, and I just want to be his quote-unquote humble servant." So a humble servant is someone who disowns somebody after being friends for 20 years because of their new religious affiliation.
Or cult, rather. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking about mine, not hers.
Let's close up because I gotta put my little one to bed.
Yeah, definitely.
I will close this with this great poem based on this little account of your friend who has gone off the deep end. I will close it with this poem that appears in Tanbih al-Na'imin, the exhortation to those who slumber by Ezia Khanum. This is this refutation by the great aunt of Abdul Baha to a communication that he sent her. She relates that some of the Bayanis during the Baghdad period and the Aderna period, when they had realized the kind of claims that, grandiose claims that Baha'u'llah was making for himself, and were just completely disenchanted with the whole thing, they made up this poem and would read it and laugh in gatherings. The poem goes as follows: Agar Hussein Ali, mazhar Hussein Ali ist, hezar rahmat haq bar ravan pak Yazid. If Hussein Ali, i.e. Baha'u'llah, is the Hussein of Ali, 1,000 mercies of truth upon the pure soul of Yazid. That is how one responds to someone as deluded as this friend. And we're going to have to leave it there because I have to go now. Until next time, everybody be well. La hujja ila aliyan qabli nabi.
All right.